Hello and welcome
to Red, White, and Bi, the podcast for critical thinkers in the realm of politics. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Ash.
And we're coming to you for episode 21 already. Remember being 21, Ash?
Vaguely. I didn't do any 21 type things when I was 21. And we're sitting here today drinking tea because there's a snowstorm.
Yeah, usually we record at night and get just a little bit buzzed because the conversation flows better or whatever. But we're on the brink of a big Midwest storm, so we got some tea, we got our pup taking a cozy little nap, and we're wrapped up in a heated blanket, and we're gonna do this like granny chic style.
I like that. Tea is just very comforting, and it's the kind of day where it just feels nice to be cozy on the couch.
And if anyone who knows me has ever heard me talk about tea, I've said it ad nauseum. Did you know that green tea is the only food that the FDA recognizes as being actually preventative of cancer?
Antioxidants?
Antioxidants, but like they have studies and like acknowledge that drinking green tea reduces your risk of cancer, like officially.
I didn't know that specifically about green tea. You know, you hear about benefits like drink it if you want to lose weight, drink it to prevent cancer. I also just know that soup is good food, and and tea and soup have that nice soothing thing. It's like a hug, you know?
Oh man, we should. I don't know anything about it, so like shame on me for bringing it up, but soup is good food. We should talk about the Campbell's soup thing.
Yeah, that a Campbell's soup exec got fired for calling Campbell's products poor people shit or something like that.
And I just gotta say, in my family, and Ash knows this, it's a big joke. And shout out to my sister, because she said it first in the 90s, that soup is poor people food. And she's kind of right. Like, soup is good and comforting, and I don't think you have to be poor to enjoy it, and anyone can have soup. But it does kind of like have this vibe of like trying to make your food stretch a little further than it should.
Yeah, you know, like people scrape together what's left in the back of the fridge, they throw it on a pot and cook it up, and it's like waste not, want not, you know?
Yeah, it's the dinner that's 50% water.
But I gotta say, we would have once a week in our household growing up, we had soup and sandwiches night.
Well, that's cute.
And I looked forward to it every
because
week.
you have to have sandwiches with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Soup on its own isn't dinner. Like, you basically had a side dish floating in water.
Yeah, my mom would make a beef barley soup, and then she would make us BLTs, which for me had no tomato on them.
Aw, that's cute. I would have liked that as a kid.
It was a nice time. So shout out to Vicky and her soup and sandwiches night.
Anyway, what's going on this week, Ash?
I feel like a lot of kind of crazy things happened, starting with the National Guard shooting in Washington, D.C. It was kind of something that, you know, as the area got more dangerous, didn't necessarily surprise me to hear that somebody had gotten violent, because I guess carjackings and violent crime was up anyway. But it's something definitely when they're sent there and they volunteer to try to kind of cool down the situation, it was a shame to hear about.
Yeah, they volunteer for peacekeeping and for protecting people's like safety and rights. I realize that there's some controversy about how they're being used in the country right now, and like, is it overkill to be sending basically like a militia into cities? That's a whole nother conversation, but the same way that I think people have good intentions when they go into their fields, respective fields, right? Like, you don't become a teacher to have 50 kids and have like half of them be illiterate by the time you're done with them. You don't go into medicine to like have patients drowning in bills and stuff. People go into their professions with good intentions for the most part, and it's so sad that the one girl, I think you said the victim who has since passed away. So two individuals were shot. They were both in critical condition, and the female, the 20-year-old, has actually succumbed to her wounds and passed away. I think I heard that she had just been sworn in.
Yeah, I think actually both Sarah Beckstrom, the 20-year-old victim, and Andrew Wolf, the 24-year-old victim, had both been sworn in the day before.
Thank you for knowing their names and having that. I want to give them that respect. But yeah, that's so young. Like, we're joking around about being 21 and what we did, you know, at the top of the episode here. she's
just
not even
babies.
old enough to buy a drink.
Yeah, they're just babies. And by the way, I always thought that maybe we should lower the drinking age to 18 because the idea that you can serve your country, die for your country, and you can't have a drink is BS to me.
Yeah, it's...
Or we should make exceptions for service members at least.
At least, man. It was, really sad news coming out of Washington. And like you said, you expect casualties. Maybe when we imagine it, we think about like big burly guys who are racist and have a hard-on for authoritarianism and like fighting street terrorists or whatever, and like maybe that was a casualty we imagine, but it's like this was a kid.
Yeah,
they were both kids.
I had a friend on the hard left for a while, and little by little it was one of those things where like you can get along with anybody if you have things in common with them, but there were things that she would say that would just strike me as a little gross. I didn't think that much about military members until like I got out of college and I was struggling to find a job, and then actually like I couldn't have gotten into the military if I'd wanted to join.
Sure.
For my own, medical reasons and stuff. But I thought like...
'Cause you're gay. No.
Yeah.
Just kidding, guys. She's bi. Read the show.
Wow, you took me by surprise. Then I found out Alexander the Great was a fag. Talk about gays in the military. Sorry, that's a quote from the Birdcage.
Yeah, that's a quote. Birdcage, can't recommend that movie enough. Yeah, it's so fucking funny.
Hilarious. Nathan Lane and Robin Williams.
National treasures.
Good stuff. Hank Azaria makes the movie.
Hector Spartacus.
But I actually, I started to think like, no, I kind of wish I could. Like be in the military. Now that I can't do it, I had respect for the people that served, especially if they didn't like have to do it to go to college, and like whatever was pulling them toward that, I thought, no, you're taking great risks and you're probably like learning a lot and getting stronger in so many ways, and I had really changed my mind since like high school age when I used to see the ROTC guys come in and like try to recruit and all of that. And so this friend on the left said, well, they put the target on their back. Like
by signing up?
Yeah, like it's a choice. And like whether you're a cop or you're in any branch of the military, like you're choosing to do that. And I know that you could say that of like people who join ICE or anybody in the military, but just because that may be true doesn't make it right that somebody...
It's an oversimplification.
Yeah, it really
right?
is.
Like, yes, you are signing up for the risks, but there have got to be a million reasons for joining armed forces or something along those lines. Like, you do have like a college incentive. You do have maybe just like general insecurity about your future. I know people who were just like bad kids and they joined the military and it gave them like order and discipline and direction in life. There's a million. I considered joining because I really wanted to be a military nurse. I can't imagine the sexual harassment I would have had to go through if I had, and I'm glad that I didn't. But I think it's a really positive thing for a lot of people, and the decision, I think it's fair to say, most often has nothing to do with your politics as much as it's about your life and what you need and the direction you feel like you can take.
Yeah, and it seems unfair to, talk about people like these two victims who I'm sure, regardless of what they thought they were in for, never thought that they would die on American soil.
Yeah, talk about like what you sign up for. I'm sure this 20-year-old and 24-year-old didn't think that by signing up for the National Guard, they would get shot down in the street like a war zone.
Yeah, and in the nation's capital.
Yeah, it's sad. It's unnecessary. As much as somebody, like we were both super into, as much as people like us are like super into true crime and those type stories, I always prefer narratives that focus on like the victims and their families and the way the law enforcement interacts with them. I won't watch anything from the killer's point of view. Right. I don't give a shit. However, let's talk about who committed this horrible act.
Yeah, so it is a 29-year-old Afghan refugee who came over in 2021 when we actually pulled out of Afghanistan. His last name is Wakanwa. And he was only 29 himself, so it's a pretty young man. But, as much as we see some of the major news publications are talking about how he had PTSD. A lot of people, I think, who go to war zones deal with stuff like that, but it's like, you can't really justify.
No, it's the same excuse.
What he did.
Yeah, it's the same excuse we see in like these true crime stories and stuff too, where it's like, oh, they had an abusive childhood and their daddy left them and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that road isn't very difficult, and those people who have chronic PTSD or PTSD from like a war situation, I can't imagine what that is like. I have the utmost empathy for that. However, like, look how many people do go through those situations and they don't use it as an excuse to murder other people. Maybe you have nightmares. Maybe, like, relationships are difficult. Maybe you need therapy.
Yeah.
Maybe you need some medication and, like, some support for what you're going through. It's not an excuse to gun someone down.
So regardless of what people like Randy Fine, a Republican, said, in the early hours of this happening, that the guy came here illegally, that was not true. He was, part of this wave of people who came over and were essentially granted asylum. Trump said very inarticulately in this presser that, people were in the aircraft carrier. They were in airplanes, like, stacked on top of each other trying to get out of there during
And we're
this.
talking about, like, that big evacuation in Afghanistan when American presence was over, and the completely botched evacuation.
Yeah.
So these people, like, forced their way onto these planes, or they were allowed to, but it was just disorderly?
It was a combination. You did hear stories at the time of people hanging onto the planes from underneath, just like trying desperately to get out of there, because there was interviews with women there that were pleading with Americans not to leave, that they'd be abandoned, that they were the only thing like holding the situation together. And then I think people who live in that region know well enough and have seen enough to know that when you create a power vacuum, the people who can come in and take back over are going to be scarier than anything you're dealing with an American presence. So I don't blame them for feeling desperate to go anywhere other than where they were.
Yeah, the fear must be overwhelming. That's so sad.
And we can't know how many people were well-intentioned, just want to get out of there and come to the States and be safe, versus, I can't speak to the mentality of this guy who did this terrible thing. Like, when he first got here, did he have good intentions, or was he always going to be somebody who hurt people, and wanted to be a martyr because he was shouting Allah Akbar? Like, I don't know if he did have some sort of break and it was something, that snapped, or as Trump put it, he said they go cuckoo.
Oh my God.
But it's like, we don't know who he was. We don't know what he was like before, and I don't think until they really like look into his background and thoroughly look at what went wrong, we should be guessing at that necessarily.
Yeah, it's kind of like future crime, right? Like, I don't know if you really wanted to fool somebody and lie somebody and get into the country and say you love America and all this stuff, like, that seems like it should be pretty eased to do. So I'm not sure that he necessarily could have been vetted away from entering.
Right.
And this is always where the conversation comes back to with immigration, right? Like, if it was easy, I always say if it was easy, then we'd have an answer.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak, too out of school on it, because quite frankly, I don't know enough about the Quran to know which passages and stuff, but I have read that there are verses in the Quran which basically give you permission, if you're committing holy war, to lie about anything you want. Say whatever you need to say, and basically, what you hear from people who are very suspicious of, mass Muslim immigration is like, a terrorist in a suit is still a terrorist. They might lie or say what they need to say to get over here and commit acts of war. I have no idea if that guy had the wherewithal at any point to be that person. And I'm not going to assume so when we don't know the facts. You know, I don't know what his mentality was. But to Hannah's point, all we do know is that 2 young people were seriously hurt. One of them has already passed away. And whatever the mentality of the person who felt entitled to do this, that is a tragedy.
Yeah, I struggle because I know a lot of times these acts of like violence and desperation do come from a place, like you can follow the path back to a source sometimes. It's never an excuse, but it can be a reason. I find myself like, and I don't even really necessarily want to say this out loud. Like, I'm just trying to be honest, I guess. I find myself thinking like, I don't care. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. You know how many people deal with unspeakable hardship and don't turn into awful human beings because of it? Yeah. Like, no one's saying that your life is easy. No one's saying that, like, it's fair. But you chose to do evil. And I don't care what your story is, and I do want you out of the country. Or, like, I don't want my tax money paying for your imprisonment, so if you stay here, I hope it's a short stay, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, and the irony really is that of all the people who came over here, I'm sure that these refugees would not want us to paint a broad brush in talking about them.
Absolutely, and we don't intend to. Like, let's be clear about that.
Yeah, exactly. But the reverse is, we wouldn't want anybody to paint somebody who is a kid who joins the National Guard with such a broad brush that they feel entitled to hurt them just because of the path that they've chosen. And so to see somebody in any situation in life feel entitled to take another person's life is hard for me to wrap my mind around. I think especially as like people who respect the freedom of other people. It's just like, as long as you're not hurting anybody, and really, like, from what we can tell, they were probably just standing there. What gives you the right to hurt somebody else? And it's hard for me, I think, as somebody who loves freedom and just knows that people who join the military intend to protect our freedoms. It's hard to see.
Well, and that's something we're seeing, like, in general, just in politics. And call me unfair or biased, whatever, I'll just say I feel like, anecdotally at least, I'm seeing it from people on the left, like an on-purpose message to leftists that like it all, remember in the pandemic it all started with like punch a Nazi, like you have a right to physical violence if you disagree with someone's ideology, and maybe even a responsibility to do something terrible. So when I found out that the shooter in the situation was an Afghan immigrant, I won't say I was like surprised, but I would have been equally, if not more so, unsurprised to find out it was just a leftist who like didn't think that the National Guard should be employed there.
And what's interesting, when you said the whole punch a Nazi thing, I forget the name of the kid who went to the Capitol with a religious school and had people like getting in his face, and you know, they said he was smirking or whatever.
Not smirking. Call the Fed.
But basically, it was something where they were doing something, I think, for like a pro-life cause, and he was just standing outside of the Capitol, and people were getting in his face or whatever. And basically, all these big newspapers in the country smeared the kid and said that he was like a Nazi or...
Because he was with this group?
Yeah, and they said that he was like smirking at the people, and really it was like they were told to smile at your enemy. And so basically they dragged his name through the mud, and he was a high school student.
That's so sad.
And they ruined his reputation, so he sued, and he won.
Oh, good for him.
And my thought was...
Some early life lessons for that kid.
This was a high school student who I felt, you know, like once I read about everything, was a victim in a situation. Like, because he's entitled to his opinion whether you're pro-life or not. And not only did people, like, hurt him, but there were all these comments about him when his name was being dragged. Like, he's the Nazi, he has a punchable face. It's like, he's a kid. He's a
minor.
Yeah, and I thought, like, this is getting
And, like,
scary.
let's be logical for a second. Like, he smiled. So, first of all, like, smiling, the proportionate response is not to dox and smear him in the media, even if he was an adult. And let's think about, like, all the possible reasons that could be behind a smile like that. People could smile because they're nervous, because they're genuinely not upset, because they think you're a fucking idiot, which is his right to think. Like, there's all kinds of reasons he could be, quote-unquote, smirking, and none of them justify a reaction from you.
Yeah.
Your reactions are still your responsibility, and I am afraid and angry when I see that just becoming, like, people feel like they can speak that truth away.
Yeah.
Your reactions are absolutely your responsibility.
Yeah, we're getting to a place in politics where I think people are telling themselves that the ends always justify the means, and that is not something that fits with American culture and the freedom of expressing whatever you want. Just
not supposed to, anyway.
Yeah, it really just shouldn't jive. So that said, we should probably pivot a little bit on Trump's response to all of this.
Yeah, can we talk about this? Because I think this is a good example of us being balanced.
Sure.
We had a lot to say about Biden's senility and that he couldn't string a coherent sentence together, and that he was making us look weak and vulnerable in a way that I felt was, like, scary for our country. So what did our fearless leader say in response to all this?
So at the most recent presser, I watched this on News Nation, a reporter asked, "Why do you blame the Biden administration?"
The suspect worked very closely with the CIA in Afghanistan for years, that he was vetted, and the vetting came up clean.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens, too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But, look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. And that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration
because
for
they
what
let
this
them
man
in.
did?
Are you stupid? Are
Well,
you
no.
a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful. And if you look, you'll see there was a law passed. It makes it almost impossible not to let them in, not to certify them, so to speak, once they come in. And they came in, and they shouldn't have come in. And frankly, the whole thing was a mess. The whole Afghanistan situation was a mess. It should have never taken place. If we're going to go out, and we would have gone out because I had everybody ready to go, we were going to go out with strength and dignity and precision, and we would have left from Bagram, and we would have kept Bagram, by the way, because of its very close relationship to China and where they make their missiles.
It's a straightforward question that might just actually be like, hey, can you explain the history of this situation? And
So back up a second, though.
Yeah.
He's blaming the Biden administration for their botched evacuation in Afghanistan and for allowing this person in unvetted and then not doing anything about it after he was already here.
Exactly.
That basically the blood of these two young people is on Biden's hands.
Yeah, so she asked, why do you blame the Biden administration? And he starts with, are you stupid? As he starts to, quote unquote, explain, he becomes less and less coherent in his response. And I think part of it is that he doesn't like being challenged. He gets very angry, but he's also freaking old.
Yeah, let's be fair in, again, like how we treated Biden with his age, and Trump isn't that far behind, and he, I think, is quite a bit sharper. But should anyone that old hold that much power and have such an extremely high stress, important job? It's too high stress for me to ever, like, if somebody, not that they would, but if anyone offered me the presidency, I'd be like, no fucking way. Like, I'm not sharp enough for that. I don't have the stamina or the energy.
Certainly the job is stressful. and maybe everybody would benefit from a little break or something between that first and second term, you know? Obama was pretty young and his hair got real white by the time that second term rolled around. So I understand it could take its toll on anybody, but maybe we would all benefit if you weren't 69 plus when you started.
Yeah, like, how about just we don't make the oldest people in our country do this?
I'm ready for a Gen X president, I gotta say.
I mean, the idea of a Gen X president seems relieving to me, if only because I don't think they would do anything at all. And I'm ready for that. I'm ready for, like, a low drama, lame duck.
I'm ready for Rubio to really designate all of the Muslim Brotherhood as a terror organization instead of just picking and choosing and leaving out Qatar and Turkey like Trump does.
That's a different story. But speaking of these country lists, in response to the shooting that we're talking about, the presidential response has been to put a hold on any visa approvals from, quote, third world countries. So I have questions. And first of which, are we still calling them third world countries? I thought we were supposed to do that like 10 years ago.
Well, it's an improvement for Trump because I think he usually calls them shithole countries.
Yeah, weren't they like garbage countries or something?
Yeah,
like
I think
that
he
before?
literally called Haiti a shithole country.
So I think the preferred nomenclature is developing country, but I still have issues with that because, like, that's vague. I don't think there's an official list of countries that are considered first, second, and third world or developing or advanced or whatever. It sounds like it might be easier to make a list of countries that you do still review visas from. But he hasn't clarified any countries one way or the other. I don't really know what this babbling translates to in terms of a plan.
It's because he's trying to avoid Muslim ban, because that's what got him in trouble last time. So my thought is, Hannah probably has a great point. Why don't you just pick a few countries that you want to recruit from? People that you know, like, these are smart individuals, like, I haven't had any kind of problems if they don't have a criminal background and they're from South Korea, you know, something you just don't see like a common threat. It's whatever. Because I don't know that you would want to be recruiting people from the UK right now, because you might have the same problems if you come from anywhere else.
It's
Canada?
Yeah, so full circle, right? Like, the whole thing is a sticky situation. How do you vet it all? If people want to lie, they will, without making broad, sweeping generalities, which maybe, I don't know if that's the answer or not. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it doesn't, whatever it is we are doing, we're not doing it enough, or it's just not working.
Yeah, and maybe we aren't to a place where we could just shut down the border for a few years. Like, maybe there's enough of, like, job gaps or skills gaps that they feel they have to recruit people from India for medical or what have you. But it's one of those situations where I think if you did two problem-solving things in conjunction with each other, you might have something there. Like, I don't know why high schools aren't focused on filling some of these skills gaps. You know, like, couldn't we, like, I know you actually did some stuff in your school where you were able to, like, learn, like, nurse's aid stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a medical dental program. There were programs for getting kids into law enforcement right outside of school. We had a couple, like, vocational tracks. Not a ton, but there were some.
But I feel like, especially with the vocational gaps, if you could give kids school credit for learning things and they could try things on for size and see if they actually liked some of the things, like plumbers, HVAC, all of that stuff, it's like you could teach kids something useful, lucrative, and then also let them choose what they would like the best, rather than just sort of like, I graduated high school, I'm going into this just because it'll help me get by, but I kind of hate it. You know, you don't want it to end up like, you're Johnny HVAC because this is like Russia. You have no choice in the matter. But also, like,
Johnny HVAC.
But also, you don't want young men, I feel like, are really getting left behind. They're not going on to college, but they're also not learning skilled trades.
What are they doing? Playing video games and watching porn?
Yes, that's what they're doing.
Did I say that out loud?
Yes, you did. But it's like, can't we help everybody out by making sure people have good jobs, fill the skills gap, and then do what we can with Americans? And then if we also need to recruit the best and brightest from around the world, we can certainly do that. But I feel like people like to blame immigrants for Americans getting left behind when there are so many other problems that we're just not addressing.
Yeah, for sure. And I know it's a big part of the idea of America and the American spirit to, like, we're built on immigration. We're built on, like, taking, like, a quilt approach to our culture and our workforce and all that stuff. Like, it's what makes us good and strong. Could we take 6 months off maybe and just, like, catch a breath and figure out what we're doing wrong and what we're doing right and then start back up again? Like, I don't know why it needs to be a constant influx all the time from every country. Like, I think you can take a minute to reform your policy and then come back to it. Because I do think, you know, there's a lot of people who deserve to get out of war-torn countries or places where they don't have the opportunity to reach the potential that they're capable of. And the American dream should be for everybody who wants it and who respects it.
Yeah, and when you talk about immigration courts specifically being like some of the most overwhelmed court systems in the entire country, I always go back to, like, can't we dial some of this back? And, like, what if you could have individual communities with, you know, much simpler court systems where their books aren't completely overrun, kind of looking at their own groups of refugees and like, they're like, hey, like, this guy's awesome. We could really use him to be a veterinarian in this area of town. Like, can't we recruit the people that end up in our actual communities and, like, help people out and have them decide what's needed rather than just, like, somebody, you know, like, knocking a gavel to get another one through and just so they don't have to deal with it anymore. It just seems like anything that is, like, at the federal level and overwhelmed and, like, just a big old mess, maybe you guys are doing it wrong.
Perhaps. Speaking of big old messes and doing things wrong, we had quite the blue wave in November this month in terms of, like, elections. How's New York doing? How's Mamdani?
Mamdani is a funny bastard. And the reason I say that is because, all right, so you're already hearing chatter that all of these really, really rich people, billionaires and entrepreneurs, are moving to Connecticut, Florida, Texas, and they're not going to pay the taxes that he said he needs, you know, 40% plus.
40%.
To pay for his free busing, for example. So he decides to post this commercial.
It might be November, but I'm still saying yes to your donations.
Is that it? Is that the whole thing?
So it was a 9-second commercial.
A 9-second commercial? Would you run out of money for advertising too?
So instead of November, I love that the caption on the commercial is "Say yes to more things." So basically, don't say no to me because I can't have you saying no. I won't be able to sustain myself if you say no.
That's advice
Say
for, like,
yes.
middle-aged divorcees who are afraid of life and don't know how to socialize after their marriage has fallen apart. That's not how you fundraise, sir.
It takes an idiot yes man to say yes to socialism, in my humble opinion.
And I gotta say, like, obviously this is an audio podcast, but if you get a chance to check out that video, watch his smirk at the end. It's like every guy you've ever met in a bar who knows he's giving you a line and he knows you know he's giving you a line, and he just does it anyway and hopes for the best. And it's like, I could wipe the sleaze off his face. Ugh.
Just for Hannah, I will post the video clip on YouTube because it's only 9 seconds, so you know that I can get away with it. That is fair use, baby.
Well, it's good to know that communism hasn't changed, and I wish the rest of the world would kind of, like, jive with that idea a little bit. But turns out, who was the person who is quoted as saying, eventually you run out of everyone else's money?
Margaret Thatcher is a good one. Yeah, like, that's the problem.
The money comes from somewhere, guys, and you can hate billionaires all you want, and maybe you think you can run communism on just Elon Musk money, and maybe you can for 5 years. Maybe. I mean, I haven't run the numbers. I have no idea. But there's a finite amount of money that you can take from people and not produce anything to balance it out. And this is just like a micro example, but it's true on any scale.
And we might have a slightly, macro example of it just read today that Canada is on the brink of collapse for the same reason.
Hasn't that been true for a long time though?
Well, I guess the billionaires are moving out of Canada, and they're saying, we're seeing an actual Atlas Shrugged situation where it's becoming a dystopian hellscape over there in a way that is more true than even the past 2 decades.
I think it takes a Midwesterner to truly hate Canada.
As much as I do.
Well, as much as any of us do. I have a show I love. It's like a underground, not many people know it, cult classic kind of show from the 90s, and they're from Wisconsin, and they hate Canada as much as we do, and it's just kind of refreshing to see.
Yeah, you can say the name of your show you like.
Well, it's Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was on Comedy Central and the Sci-Fi Channel back in the 90s, and I love it.
And they even have a song about Canada, don't they?
They have a song with verses about Canada. Yeah, I'm not going to sing it for you, but it's hilarious, and you should check it out.
Maybe I'll cut it in at the end if I can find it.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure.
But anyway, we know that Mamdani is already begging money off of people. And he's only been in office a few weeks. And that should be very telling that he's already realizing this isn't going to work.
And that's the smirk. That's the smirk he gives at the end. He knows it's a line. He knows it's not going to work. But he's going to shoot a shot anyway because he's that slimy.
Well, and he probably doesn't even care if he knows it's not going to work. Because what does a socialist do? Lines his pockets. So it doesn't matter if you never get free public transportation as long as he gets richer in the process. And that's what socialism is all about.
Well, I would say good luck to him, but I don't wish him good luck at all. So good luck to the New Yorkers. Hang in there, guys, every 2 years, right?
Don't hang in there. Leave. We got to show them. So speaking of socialist nations, Venezuela. Back in the news again.
Venezuela. I kind of feel bad. Well, I mean, I feel bad for the regular Venezuelan anyway. But, like, what's going on is weird in a way that I'm afraid to even really explore.
Yeah, I just saw that Maduro's opposition, all the elections down there are rigged, so you really can't be true opposition. He and his family were doing, like, an ad for the upcoming election, and their food was plastic in the ad because they don't have any real food to eat.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So
even they don't?
Yeah, it was very obvious that it was like that rubber lettuce from like a kid's play set and everything, and they look like they're trying to look like an American family with burgers and everything, but you can tell that the bun is plastic. And
oh, no.
Yeah, so it's kind of a sad state of affairs generally.
So, just to recap, like, beyond their problems with rubber food and rigged elections, we are up to, I think the last time I heard the numbers, and don't quote me here, but the last time we heard the numbers, there were 20 boats that the U.S. government has sunk from Venezuela, claiming that they're drug boats, and 84 people have lost their lives as a result of this. This is all conjecture with no proof of any kind of drug activity that I've heard of or seen. Unilaterally decided by the executive branch, didn't go through Congress. It's supposedly not a real act of war. And there's no like trial or due process for these people. They're just suspected of carrying drugs, and we're murdering them in their own water.
So another reason that we wanted to revisit this was I saw this tweet that to me was really just kind of gross and scary. And it was from the Washington Post, which is obviously left-leaning, but I did see this retweeted from several sources, including right-wing sources. and the Washington Post exclusive is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave the order to, quote, kill everybody in the first strike on a suspected drug boat in the Caribbean. There's two ways to say that. I got neither. In the Caribbean. That's a Norm Macdonald joke. After 2 men survived, the mission commander ordered a second strike to comply with Hegseth's instructions, according to sources. So what I was reading was basically there were people still alive in the water, and they just kept firing on them to make sure they were dead.
Because it's not about destroying the drugs or scaring people off. The literal order was to end every life on that ship.
Kill them all, which without any kind of due process or physical evidence.
And without an official declaration of war. Even if it was war, that's kind of a dark order, but you're going to claim it's just to prevent a crime that hasn't happened yet in a jurisdiction that isn't yours.
Which now the Department of State has declared war on a couple of these drug cartels, but I think Rubio just did it after the fact because it's like, we got to do something about this. Or
like, this is our administration's scandal if we don't put something out there.
And to me, it's like, I've talked to a Republican congressman who said he thinks it's possible that Trump could be impeached over this. It's all, I'm not going to say whose name it was because it's like not public information, but it's like, if Republicans are thinking this is really hairy, you shouldn't be doing this, and one of them who's been very public about it is, of course, Rand Paul, then maybe there's something to the fact that you don't have any legal authority to do this and you should probably stop.
And listen, I understand that maybe in contrast to Ash's belief that drugs in America are a problem, I understand, like, I've seen TV, I know the dark side of the drug cartel world, and like people suffer and are victimized, and horrible things happen on the fringes and the underbelly of the drug trade. I'm not saying I support that whatsoever, but like this is like war crime.
Yeah, my thought is if you see a movie like Sicario and you understand how messed up it could be if even people who had the authority, which we wouldn't for any reason, to be down there actually making like combat with drug cartels, these people have a lot of power. They run entire countries. And so the idea that you are going to just attack their livelihood when essentially they're like paramilitary groups that are running countries, and that you're not going to pull us into a war is really absurd to me. And the more I see Trump trying to meddle, like he's been tweeting on True Social about how we have to defend democracy in Venezuela. He's naming other countries in South America and Central America where, this is happening. It's like, wait a minute. I'm not MAGA, I'm outside looking in here, but weren't you like Mr. America first? We're not going to have any wars. We're not going to get into any of this. And he's starting to look a little bit more like military industrial complex all the time. It's a little weird.
I think, and we may have talked about this on the show already before or not, I don't remember, but like Venezuela has an incredible amount of oil, right?
Yeah.
I mean, call it what it is.
Yeah. And
you're not there to defend democracy. You're there to not have to depend on the Middle East for oil.
Yeah, Trump has a very weird way about him. I think the problem, and it could be decline, is that he changes his mind like his underpants.
Let's hope so.
And it's like when he talked about buying Greenland, when he comes up with these wackadoo ideas, and it's like listening to an old man talk about Bitcoin. Like he thinks he understands it one week, the next week he's scared of it, and you don't know what he's going to do about it. Well, this is the country that you're running. If you start a process and then don't see it through, people will think of it as a line in the sand that you were weak because you didn't stick to your guns. If you start a war, then you are basically cashing checks with people's asses. Like, you talk about, like, sending the National Guard in and endangering people. What about sending them to actual war zones?
Yeah, I mean, the jungles of Venezuela over drugs, like, I can't imagine, like, a scarier situation. It'd be like Vietnam times 10. What are we doing?
Yeah, and I really think that, you know, one of the most brilliant minds in terms of foreign policy is Marco Rubio. And when you hear about some of these terrorist designations that he's being left out of talks, that really scares me, because it's like you have somebody I think of as a pretty brilliant Secretary of State, and you're not using him until like after you've already made bad decisions and having him try to clean up your mess. Not only are you probably going to keep Marco Rubio from ever being able to be president, you're also just getting yourself into bad situations and then trying to, like, you know, clean it up after the fact, and that's no way to run a country. I'm not even sure what's really happening, and it takes a big ash to admit when I can't see the forest for the trees.
A very big ash indeed. I feel bad for those Venezuelan people. I don't understand what's going on. This feels so gross and out of control already. They're moving our biggest worship from the Mediterranean, where I assume it was like kind of presiding over like maybe the Gazan coast or something, into the Caribbean. They're doing like full out military operations in the Caribbean and surrounding Venezuela. This, I think, just came out today or yesterday. There's a statement that Trump made saying that the airspace around Venezuela needs to be absolutely cut off. So it's like, I don't get where you get off making these kind of decisions about a country that is not your aggressor.
No, and it's so weird to think. I've been watching these John Stossel reels where he talks about books to get your loved ones that are interested in liberty, and he did this little blurb with Rand Paul probably a few years ago now, where he talked about how people in Venezuela got so desperate that they were eating zoo animals, eating their pets, like you name it. And I believe that somebody like Rand Paul, who really has no interventionist bone in his body, cares more about helping these people than whatever the hell Trump is planning on doing. So you always, like, I'm not one of those people who thinks Trump is so smart, he's always playing 4D chess and everything. But I am kind of like wondering, what is his angle here? Because it's okay for me to admit that I don't get Trump sometimes, but I really don't get what the heck the plan is. And as somebody who pays close attention to politics, it scares me when I can't guess the angle at all.
Mm-hmm. Because I think in a situation like that, it's like, is there one? Yeah. Like, obviously, he has an objective and he has a plan for what he's going into here. But to your point, he does change his mind all the time. He's getting older. He's not, like, super sharp or careful. I feel like he jumps before he looks. And, like, maybe the angle is that he doesn't have a clear angle.
Speaking of changing your mind.
Yeah, can we talk about the Epstein files?
I don't know, Hannah, can we?
Yeah, I don't know either, to be honest. So, on Wednesday, it has been 1 week since the Senate, the House, and then the President all agreed that the Epstein files were to be released.
Yeah. So Trump signed off on it, and now Kash Patel, head of the FBI, the director, and Pam Bondi, head of the DOJ, decided they're going to take some time and decide what can legally be released.
Yeah, so it sounds like, from what I can tell, there is a scramble going on, probably redacting files, editing things. I imagine there's a 24-hour shred room that no one is allowed to see. But, like, legally, they have 30 days to comply with this order. And I think they're probably going to take all 30 and, like I said, scramble as much as they can to edit the information or to redact it. The deadline for this is December 19th. That'll be 30 days. So I think I'm sure I'm in good company in saying So I am sure I'm in good company by saying that we're all just waiting on tenterhooks to see what the heck we're going to actually find out, if anything at all, if anything can even be ascertained from it. I'm imagining that it's going to come out and it'll all be this banal, like, business talk and nothing will get revealed and no one will be pinpointed. I think it's going to be the biggest letdown.
No, and I just have this image in my mind of Tom Massey holding up a completely redacted piece of paper and, you know, like, we'll have congressional hearings to make it look like they're still trying to do stuff. But I don't think we're going to learn anything from this.
No, I think too many people in charge on both sides of the aisle have too much to lose. And I think the only thing that will be accomplished is that people will stop griping about it, because it's like, you wanted the files, here are the files. Good luck reading them.
When we're at a place where our politicians are corrupt, they're protecting pedophiles, many of them are pedophiles themselves, I'm sure, and both sides are just spending and taxing, and we don't have any representation, it's getting harder and harder to not just have my blood pressure up every single day that I am a political person.
It's making me kind of like full circle here, right? Like we talked about in the very first topic, it's just making me care less and less. I feel like the American people have no power. I feel like the Constitution has less and less power every day. Like, there are no checks and balances. Like, how can I care about something that can't be fixed?
Yeah, I saw some, pro-Trump page on X or Twitter saying like we're going to win the midterms. And I thought, we're not winning anything. Like, the best thing that could happen to the GOP is for every pro-Trump Republican who passed a massive spending bill to eat shit in this midterm, to, get some new blood and people who haven't been in the swamp for, however long Nancy and Chuck and Mitch have been there, and just kick these people out. If somebody doesn't support term limits, if they don't support getting rid of income tax, and if they don't hate tariffs and believe that they're a congressional power and not a presidential one, don't vote for them.
I heard a quote, I think from you, Ash, earlier this week. Somebody was saying, if you're not like supporting Republicans basically at any cost, what's the point of having, it was Trump, right?
Yeah.
He was like scolding Congress people who didn't vote in line with their party, Republicans. What was the point of having a Republican Party if you're not voting in line with your party? And she told me that, and I was like, you're making my argument for me. What is the point of having a Republican Party at this point? Because you guys are you're playing for each other, and you have nothing to do with what your constituents actually want or what is fair or just. Yeah,
and Tom Massey, he basically went on somebody's podcast and said publicly that he and his staff have been threatened by the FBI, Kash Patel's FBI. He believes, because Trump told them to, that if he doesn't straighten up, then they're going to be charged with fraud.
Oh my God.
So to me, it's like when you're threatening members of your own party, if they won't walk in lockstep, when really your only obligation should be to actually represent your constituents and what you think they want you to do. That's a real problem, and this is becoming more like a uniparty who's just pushing people around and wildly corrupt. And, it's kind of sad. People would say of the left, which, this is all kind of getting into like a really corrupt stew is where we are. I feel like they'd say, you can vote your way into socialism, but you're going to have to shoot your way out. It's like, we're already in this terribly corrupt place where the federal government has way too much power over the rest of us. And it's like, how do we get Congress people to remember they represent a state? And like,
well, what's to remind them when they can't be fired, and they can run as many times as they want, and they can do whatever they want once they're in office?
Yeah, it's we've got to get people voting to remember, hey, like, you don't have to continually vote for Mitch McConnell. You don't have to vote for Chuck Schumer. If someone challenges them and you like them better, get them the hell out of there. It doesn't matter how long they've been there. Like, we have to do whatever we can to take back some of our power and challenge some of these people. You know, it's probably easy for me to say because I don't think I'd want to be caught dead in a congressional race. But I still hope that people who are willing to throw their hat in the ring will do something other than walk in lockstep. It's high time for some challenges to these old fogies that just take our money and then retire on a beach in Florida because the taxes are lower there.
Gee, they don't like taxes either? Weird.
No. There's a reason Nancy Pelosi from California has a retirement place in Florida.
Oh my gosh. The irony.
The irony is too great.
Well, vive la revolution. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Ash and I realized we haven't done a poll in a while.
Yeah, it's been quite some time. So our poll question is Trump crazier than Biden, not as crazy as Biden, or about as crazy as Biden?
About the same amount of crazy.
Yeah, and take crazy however you want. It could be, you know, losing his marbles in the land of dementia, whatever you think. But go ahead and let us know if you're more confident, less, or about the same in Trump's abilities as Biden's. Thanks for listening to the 21st episode of Red, White, and Bye.
We'll see you later. Bye.
In the early stages, obviously, but do you plan to attend Sarah's funeral?
I haven't thought about it yet, but it certainly is something I could conceive of. I love West Virginia. You know, I won West Virginia by one of the biggest margins of any president anywhere. And it's, you know, these are great people. I love the people of West Virginia. I love the people of our country. But I haven't given it any thought, but it sounds like something I could do, yeah. It's very raw.